Welcome, everyone. It's always nice to see people here in person at the URA. I think this is the largest in-person group of members we've had in about a year, so this is wonderful. Thank you for joining us. We're going to start with our roll call because we do not have public comment today. I think you have to click off the meeting. Just hit OK. Excuse us, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Thank you for joining us, Lena. I'm not sure if Ellie was able to get into the meeting, but we are going to start with the roll call. Lena Andrews.
Here.
Darius Wallace.
Here.
Terrell Thomas. Tanika Harris.
Present.
Karen Garrett.
Here.
Ellie Fisher. I will try to loop her into the meeting in a moment. Councilperson Deb Gross. Again, Jerome Jackson has left the advisory. Deidre Washington.
Here.
Hello, Deidre. Rochelle
Hello.
Preston. I do not think Rochelle is with us today. Becky Yago. Alan Cisco.
I'm here. Hi, guys.
Adrian Wanaha, I am present. Robert Helwig.
Here.
Thank you, Robert. We do still have some vacancies. So Kiana continues our work with the mayor's office to make sure that we can get those filled. And welcome to our additional URA staff. We're going to move to the review and approval of the minutes. Hopefully everyone's had a moment to take a look at those. Do we have a motion to approve or any additions, corrections?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Darius. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tanika. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Great, minutes are approved. As we shared, we do not have public comment today, but we will open up for public comment again at the end of the meeting. So we wanted to just thank everyone for your support. We were trying to plan a retreat. We've had many discussions about that in our public meetings throughout 2025. And even before, we were finally able to get a time and date that worked for our board members. We wanted to do the retreat in order to make sure that we could welcome our new members. We could ask questions of the URA related to the legislation, the bylaws, the operations of the advisory, and we could have some time to do team building. We typically are coming to these meetings and we're jumping right into our business, and we wanted to have that moment to sit back and really understand the membership and have an opportunity to connect with one another and understand the work that folks are doing on the ground. We also wanted to raise the issue again of work groups. Our work groups dissolved last year, and we did want to just get some input from advisory team members on priorities so we could think about those work groups as we go into the second half of 2025. So thank you to everybody who participated, and we really appreciate everybody's support in us having those few minutes to do a little bit more of that onboarding. It was, I think, very productive and a really positive day. Just to confirm, no business was conducted that day. There was no discussion of current projects, any discussion of future projects, or any kind of review of the advisory board's allocations at that time. So we are now obviously back in our public meeting mode, and welcome to all of our members. And we're very happy to have Shantalea.
Hi, everybody.
sorry, trying to get my mic on, turn notifications off. Kiana Wassler, Chief Housing Officer at the URA, and I will take us through our announcements and administrative updates. The first one is we would like to welcome Shantalea Matthews as the new URA representative for the HOF Advisory Board. And I want to give Shantalea the opportunity to introduce herself, her title at the URA, and anything else you may want to add.
Sure. I'm Shantalea Matthews. I'm a senior project manager in the Development Services Department. I'll keep it short. I'm just very excited to be here and, serve on the board.
Thank you, Shantalea. And we call her Leah for short. If in case anyone hears us mentioning Leah, that's who we are referencing. Next, I want to check in with the group on the conflict of interest forms. Thank you to the 9 of you who have responded and provided your executed conflict of interest forms. There are 3 outstanding, and then we have 3 vacancies. So our team will continue to outreach to make sure we get conflict of interest forms for every member that is active.
And we also appreciate people disclosing conflicts when we are in meetings so that we have that spirit of transparency. So in addition of our conflict of interest forms, we really appreciate your active participation in disclosing those if they may emerge in a conversation.
Next up, we want to let everyone know that the HOF annual allocation survey ended on July 31st. We were able to collect over 600 surveys throughout many outreach opportunities across the city. And we will be providing additional information about those surveys and the responses that we received at the September HOF Advisory Board meeting, which will start the kickoff of our allocation planning process. So in September, we'll talk to you about the survey responses and how the public thinks we should spend our money. And then we'll also talk the advisory board through kind of next steps through the process and go over all the forms and everything that we'll be using to continue that process. And then our next announcement. I keep losing my space here. As Adrian mentioned, we are looking to re-engage the working groups or committees. The HOF bylaws, section 4, allows for working groups / committees and expresses that it's an important tool for the advisory boards, allowing for in-depth discussions and explorations of topics that they then report back to the main board. So we looked into some of the old HOF working groups that were established in the past that have kind of fallen off, and those were the Programming and Innovation Committee, Marketing Committee, Inclusion / Fair Housing, and RFP Review or Revision. And so we, in the future, in the coming months, I think Adrian and I are working towards figuring out, based on some of the retreat work that was done, what future committees could be, and working with the advisory board to come up with new committees that we can create.
Absolutely. And there were some trends when we heard things that folks were passionate about. We did hear some trends. And so Kiana and I have already started just walking through maybe some options. Not that those are the options we have to take, but maybe those are a sounding board that we start from when we start dialoguing about the working groups.
Okay, and that is the end of our administrative updates and announcements. Next on the agenda is Housing Stabilization Program proposed guideline changes. The URA partners with Action Housing to run the Housing Stabilization Program. This is our rental assistance program that is provided to Pittsburgh residents who are 50% AMI or below and have a short-term housing emergency where they need financial assistance to stay in their homes. We have the URA, the HOF Advisory Board, made the decision to kind of coordinate housing stabilization program as well as the legal assistance program, which we'll hear more about later, with DHS, Department of Human Services, who also provides funding to rental assistance programs and is kind of the main coordinator of these programs across the city and the county. And so it's part of that coordination with DHS. We have determined that we need to make some changes to the housing stabilization program guidelines and able to kind of be more aligned with a collaborative approach so that the city and the county are basically receiving the same level of services across the whole, metropolitan area. And so I have on the PowerPoint here some of those proposed guideline changes that we'd like to talk about today. And Natalie Ryan from Action Housing, who is our direct partner in this program, is here, and she can speak to the program and the changes as well. So just to jump right in, the eligible uses of funds for the housing stabilization program currently includes many things. One is move-in assistance, which may include first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, utility deposit. Secondly, also utilities in arrears can be included in that. Most importantly, I think the main thing that we cover with the program is rent in arrears. And then the guidelines also call out mortgage in arrears. One of the changes potentially we are considering, I would like to bring to the advisory board today the question, do we want to keep the move-in assistance first, last, security deposit, utility deposits included in the program, or do we only want to fund rent in arrears? So that's one thing we can come back and have some discussion about. The second change that's being proposed is currently the way the guideline reads is that the maximum assistance for the program is $6,000 per household. In order to service more people and to collaborate and coordinate with DHS and our other partners across the city and the county, all of our funding sources are changing to a maximum assistance amount of $3,000 per household. If that's the proposed change. Another proposed change is a household who has received a benefit within the past, households currently can only receive the benefit once every 3 years. We would like to reduce that to once every 2 years. So it's a reduction of dollar amount, reduction in time lapse between receiving the benefit. And then a new addition to the program is, since we are changing the subsidy amount, we are requesting that there be a special circumstance exemption added to the program. So with that special circumstance exemption, it's proposed that those folks in these circumstances could get a maximum award of up to $4,500 if they meet the following circumstances: a death in the household. There's a certain time period for that. Major medical crisis or hospitalization, domestic violence, stalking, or trafficking related relocation, household separation or divorce, fire, flood, natural disaster, or if making a repayment plan will make paying for rent moving forward unsustainable. So those are the current uses of the program and the proposed changes that we are putting up for consideration today.
And Kiana, could I just add a little historical note?
Yep.
So when the program started, it was directly administered by the URA. The funding cap was actually lower than the 600 per household. It was a little bit more stringent on how many times you use the program, but it was more flexible on what you could use the program for. Within the last year, we did more of this pilot with Action. We had already started contracting directly with DHS to see how we could leverage the dollars and minimize our admin burden locally. And then last year, we started this relationship with Action Housing to look at them as the main provider who would do more of this coordinated distribution of the funds. And that came from a DHS recommendation where DHS changed their protocol to try to have these funds in a more coordinated, consolidated way, as opposed to doing smaller grants to more organizations. So just a little bit of historical context. We've tried to change this program based on what we've seen. But one of the things that has been raised in this group over and over again is, since this is a flexible fund, trying to be as flexible and innovative as possible and still do this really powerful alignment with other programs across the city and county.
Thank you, Adrian. And I want to allow Natalie Ryan from Action Housing to just add any additional information you may want to add to the group.
Sure. I think it's important to note that everything that we are proposing here, we came up with as a result of looking at the data that we have in a database since COVID began in 2021. So within the past year, the average payment that we've been giving, despite having $4,500 as our maximum, has hovered between $2,700 and $3,300. So that's where we landed on the $3,000 per household cap. Changing 3 years to 2 years is because we want to consider all of these separate funding sources as one source under the Allegheny Housing Stabilization Collaborative that we call ourselves. So if somebody receives any of those separate funds, there will be 4. It will be 2 years until they receive assistance again. So just to make it cohesive across programs. And then the special circumstances came from data that we tracked from our Housing Stabilization Center, as well as our database. These are the reasons that people cite for their eviction. So we wanted to allow that flexibility to go up to that cap in those circumstances.
I want to make sure everybody in the room is. Are there any questions from the advisory team related to what you're seeing on the slides?
I have a question. This is Ellie Fisher. Natalie, can you speak to the proposed change from including like move-in assistance to just rent in arrears of mortgage in arrears? Is that based on the analysis that you've done, or where's this suggestion coming from? I think is my question.
So I don't think we're proposing that we get rid of it altogether. It's not worked into how we're doing things right now because we're focused solely on eviction prevention. I think it should remain, and we could talk about how the best way to implement that would be across programs, but this would be the only source that would allow that. So I'm not proposing that it's taken out. I'm just not sure how we would prioritize who receives it and when. So that's something that we would want to work with URA and this board together.
Okay, so there could be benefits of having that in, and that gives more flexibility, but then also it's the one oddball in this pool of funding sources is what I'm hearing.
Yep, exactly.
And that consistency piece has been something that everyone has talked about. How do we make sure everyone has access to the same resources? Because we don't necessarily know when families present which resources it is that they need. So I do think that protocol of how it would be administered is important. There's been a lot of county discussion of a first come, first serve as a way to establish equity, but then there's also arguments that that doesn't establish equity. That actually sort of flies in the face of equity. So utilizing other tools may be more appropriate, but that has not been built out. Other questions, comments, concerns, clarifying?
Thank you. So Rob Helwig, Fair Housing Representative. I just want to clarify that the highlighted portion is not presently an eligible use. Is that accurate? Or is it the inverse?
It is currently an eligible use. There was some consideration around, do we only include the highlighted portion moving forward of that section? So all of those uses are currently eligible. We can maintain the flexibility of the fund, or we can reduce it down to just arrears. We have the opportunity to make the advisory board, we're bringing that to you so you can, tell us what you want.
And Natalie, I do think that this particular board has stressed the flexibility of these dollars over other dollars. So if there was an appetite to keep that wide array, what would your next steps be related to discussing how that could be implemented?
So we did do first month's rent and security deposit previously in our 2 years ago allocation. And there was a discussion around prioritization. So really it was the determining factor at that time that we would serve those with a senior 62 and older, or a household that had children 5 and under. Just for some historical context, I think if there was an appetite to do that, something like that again, or another proposal, it is possible in our data system to do, like we built it in at that time. So I think it would just be really around how we implement it, if that's what we want to do.
And that could be something that the advisory could think about a working group around, to be able to partner more intimately with the program, as opposed to trying to work through those kind of items in this forum, which is not always the most conducive.
Sure, absolutely.
Other thoughts, questions, concerns?
So maybe this is more appropriate for the working group, but I assume there's data collected as to whether the move-in assistance was successful. Because it's just like you're putting forth funds for technically arrears that have not accrued yet.
So I think, well, in the instances that I recall, it was people moving from, a lot of times it was people moving from housing that they were evicted from, and they found another unit that we were able to help them move into. There is a sustainability assessment that we do for everybody, so they have to be able to show that they'll be able to maintain their rent moving forward. There were also people that were moving from a shelter situation. So I can't recall all the examples. It was 2 years ago now. But we could certainly look back at that data and see what we find.
Okay.
Other
Yeah.
questions or concerns or clarifying items?
Yeah, just real quick, this is Alan. On the special circumstances, sort of like, kicker. I guess my question is like, can you talk a little bit about how how you guys sort of like think about that? How you like, what sort of barriers or hopefully sort of like lack thereof you guys put it in place of in front of people facing these things. This is all coming from a place of like generally being in favor of not over engineering program guidelines to make
Sure.
them like more difficult to achieve their stated purpose, right? Like, so can you talk about how you guys sort of administer these special circumstances?
Sure. And I totally agree with your point about not over engineering things. We thought about this a lot because we want to put the 2-year limit on folks coming back. We wanted to make sure that there was the opportunity for, if somebody had an eviction crisis and then 6 months from now, somebody in their household passes away and their income is reduced by half or more, then we'd have the opportunity and the option to serve them in that instance. So we really took all of these examples from the circumstances that we have heard from people that we are serving. So this is just a way for us to kind of leave something open for those who may need it more than once every 2 years. But once that happens, then that there will be no other opportunity for 2 years after that.
Yeah. I can imagine it's like a tough needle to thread where you like want to give yourself a sort of stated structured reason to not, permanently support somebody, but
For sure.
also you want to leave yourself open enough to be creative in helping somebody that really needs it in a really crappy situation. So yeah, I guess like my encouragement is like, as long as you guys are administering this with flexibility in mind, it sounds great, and I'm glad that you guys used your existing data to come up with the list.
And I will also say we are training with staff and everybody's very aware that funding is much less than it has been previously. So it really will be viewed as a last resort. And we're getting so much better at providing referrals to people to divert from needing assistance that this really will be viewed as the last option that we can use. And we will try not to, because we want to make sure that the funding lasts.
Yeah. And so my last question is like, do you need changes to the guidelines for some like for an effectiveness or efficiency reason, or is this really are you really just letting us know this is how you're going to be implementing the program, and we could change the guidelines to match it if we want to?
Well, this is an opportunity to let you all know what DHS, legal assistance program providers, as well as Action Housing have come up with as their plan to administer the program across the city and the county. You all have the opportunity to determine with the URA funds that will only be administered in the city of Pittsburgh. I think we have $1.6 million in the 2025 allocation. You have the opportunity to determine how you want the funds to be used, and it would just be different. It wouldn't be, totally the same across every source. It'll be a little bit of an administrative burden for Action Housing, but they've done this in the past where they've used different sources for different things and run applicants through all the different tests to see what's the best source. So this could be a little different. And I think if we continued the last security deposit, that will be, something that's different than the rest of the sources in the ASK program. So no, it's not us telling you, this is us coming to you with, yeah.
Sorry, I understand that, Kiana. The sort of spirit behind my question is like, for me, I would want to encourage us to like, how do we create the most amount of flexibility for our provider while achieving the goals? And like, so my question is like, do we accomplish that by changing our guidelines to match what is recommended here? Or do we accomplish that by not changing our guidelines?
And I think that's the evolutionary conversation. We're trying to utilize lessons learned and maximize efficiencies and effectiveness. And I think, Alan, we can absolutely keep our guidelines as they have been. That is certainly an option, but I also think that it is the larger conversation that we're going to continue to struggle with related to how are we benchmarking the programming. And I think what has come about is DHS has been benchmarking programming for a long time and trying to put out its best practices. So I think we can do both. I think we can get that alignment and evolutionary thinking, as well as keeping the flexibility. So for example, proposed guideline changes in eligible uses, we do not have to change anything. In the subsidy amount, there was a maximum assistance that was set at 6,000, but what we are hearing is that really isn't utilized at those levels. So probably not the best flexibility we're creating because people aren't using it at those levels anyway or needing those levels. Thinking about the time period, what we've heard consistently from consumers of these programs is that the longer timeline to be able to come back is a barrier. So reducing that timeline actually allows, a little bit more flexibility for the users of the program. And I think that what Action was trying to give back to us was, again, We know that the 3,000 makes the most sense in the most cases, but we'd like to have a little bit of flexibility. And they looked at that through the lens of how much are people using if they have a special circumstance. So I think what's presented here, if we took out the yellow highlight, I think that what I've heard from this group historically, and then also from our providers through their lens of expertise, is just take that yellow highlight off 3 and 4. And it feels like it aligns with what board members, customers, and the data has showed us. So I think we have the option for one of our advisory members to make a motion related to what they believe gives us that good flexibility and good data-driven strategy. And then we can massage that further if that feels like it doesn't resonate across our advisory.
Adrian, I had my hand raised. I don't know if you could see that from.
Oh, I absolutely can't because your background is beige.
Oh, see, I'm open. So I just had a quick question, but I wanted to just comment to Natalie. Thank you for the data you presented. That was very helpful. It was helpful to hear that we have this program that the maximum assistance that we're able to provide is 6,000, but the average ask has been 2,700 to 3,300. Like that type of information is extremely crucial. So I just wanted to thank you. I recognize the housing stabilization program has been it's been a hard to really work through, and just really wanted to thank you and the rest of the staff at Action Housing for doing this well, because I recognize that can be challenging. The other thing I wanted to raise, and I'll probably continue to raise it, is that data is great. One of the things that we need to be thinking about is what has worked in the past is not going to work for what's to come. And just really wanting us to, like Alan said, to not pigeonhole, per se, our service providers in getting this work done. We need to create the most flexibility as possible, because what's about to come down the pipe, we haven't seen the ramifications of all of the changes that are happening within our current climate. And I wanted to ask a question. Just humor me. Under the subsidy amount, I recognize it says the maximum assistance right now is 6,000, and we're proposing to take the maximum down to 3,000. Is it okay?
If there is not a special circumstance.
Yes, if there's not a special circumstance. Yes, thank you for that. If there's not a special circumstance. So thinking about just forecasting for next year and future years, the writing's on the wall, just how things are changing. Would it be so bad to keep it with the maximum of 6,000? If individuals don't use the 6,000, they don't. But there may be some circumstances where people may need that 6,000, even though they haven't needed it before, but it was under a different administration. And when I say administration, I'm talking about the federal government. So I want to be clear. So just thinking through, is that a way that, because I'm putting that out there because what we don't want is to pigeonhole Action Housing and whomever, and then they have to come back and try to like, oh, you know what, it's changed drastically, because that average is going to change. There's going to be more people, there's going to be more situations that we haven't even thought about that could happen just as a result of the drastic changes that are to come that have not been implemented yet, but they are about to be implemented. So I just wanted to put that out there just so we can have that on record. We do need to begin to really plan. And I think this is a good opportunity right now to be thoughtful about the future and not be reactive. If we can be proactive in this conversation now. And so like, for me, I would say like, just leave it as is. And if they don't use the full 6,000, that's fine. It can be utilized somewhere else. But just to keep those, to have those, have that in place, so to make it easier on our service provider and to be able to disseminate the funds that are needed.
So Tanika, is that something that you wanted to take to the motion level, or is that something that you'd like to open up for just additional conversation? I think Natalie was going to respond.
It was additional conversation.
Okay.
And I'm also prepared to take it to motion if we need to.
Okay.
So the one thing I did want to say is that about a year ago, the the maximum for rental assistance through the county was lowered to $4,500. So what we've been doing for the past year is working really closely with landlords. If somebody has arrears over $4,500, we've been working with them to ask them for a waiver to waive the amount that's over $4,500. If they say no to that, we ask if they'll do a repayment plan with the tenant for the amount that's over $4,500. And in very many instances, we have been successful in getting them to both waive rent and enter into repayment agreements with tenants. So with that experience and with the relationships that we have with landlords that we've been working with for 4 years now or more, we think that we will also be successful in this $3,000 cap using those same strategies, and have seen that people need less. Landlords are filing sooner, so people's arrears are less. So that's kind of my response to your statement. I understand where you're coming from, but I also think we've gotten really great at being stewards of these funds by trying to preserve as much as possible for so that we can serve more people.
And it's Kiana. I just want to add that the guidelines have an appeals committee process in the guidelines. And so if there is a situation that, meets some dire emergency beyond the special circumstance exemptions, Action Housing could bring that to the URA through an appeals process and request additional sources or, any of the guidelines to be kind of changed for that particular applicant. So we could utilize that appeals process in special circumstances and still have some level of flexibility there.
Thank you. But how long would that take for that process? Would that be, I'm just thinking like if there's an emergency going on. And again, I know this sounds absolutely insane and it may sound like I'm doing too much, but just thinking about the future of what's to come, just from the nonprofit side, we're seeing some things now. And this is just a tip, we're at the tip of it. And it's scary. And that's the only reason why I'm raising that. Just thinking I think this is a great opportunity for us to be proactive. And it's fine, but wanted to put that out there. And if no one else sees it as an issue to being able to keep it at this level, that's fine. If folks can be served well, that's the goal. But I just wanted to put that out there for us to be constantly thinking about coming up with a proactive approach to what's to come, because it's coming.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tanika. I'm somewhere in between Tanika and Natalie. Not that it needs to stay at the 6,000, but I do think cutting it from 6,000 to 3,000 is too much at this moment, especially because we don't know what's to come. But we see the cuts, we see the guidelines changing all over the country. So I'm more for like an incremental cut. So 4,500 per household, it seems fitting to me. That still is closer to 6,000, is above that 3,300 average. But yeah, I'm somewhere in between Tanika and Natalie where we need to be at least for the time being.
And so what I just heard there, and I'm just going to try to sum up, is that the group may be more comfortable with changing to 4,500 per household with a maximum cap of 6,000 per household for special circumstances. I'm not sure if that is what I heard, but I think that's what I heard. And Kiana was going to give a little bit more detail about the appeals process. Kiana, if I remember correctly, there is a time limit on which the appeals need to be heard. Is that correct? Want to use this one?
I think the mic turned off. Sorry. We don't specify a time limit, but and I don't think we've had to use the appeals process in the past for this program.
We have. Historically, there was a time limit on how quickly we had to respond. I see Brianna.
10 days. We have Brianna Benjamin, who manages and coordinates the program, says the response time is 10 days. So that's within 10 days is how quickly we could respond to an appeal beyond whatever we approve today. The appeal, Brianna's saying the appeals process was for a client that was denied from the program and wanted to appeal that decision, but I think we could also use it for someone who needs a special exemption beyond what the maximum amount is as well.
And that is what DHS does. DHS also has an appeals process. So again, from a consistency standpoint, trying to make sure that there are mechanisms in place so that the client of the service isn't the one that has to try to figure out who the funder is, but having that repository of folks who will sit on those committees. When we did that with Brianna, the turnaround was very quick. She would get it out. She would give us 48 hours that she hoped that we would get back to her. So, you know, again, if we're trying to come up with some consistency across programs as we see these programs evolve, I think that revisiting the appeals process is also an important part of that to make sure that we are responsive in that as well. And it's not just for someone who's denied, but also for the level that they're awarded. That may be what they really need to discuss further and more deeply with the program funder. So we do have the opportunity to take this to a motion. If there are advisory team members that feel strongly, again, I think that I heard that people want to take the highlight off of rent in arrears and mortgage in arrears so that we maintain more flexibility with those other items. And I've heard sort of two pieces related to the subsidy amount. A concern that 3,000 may be too low as the cap, wanting to have that flexibility that someone could go up for special circumstances, but maybe also keeping the maximum assistance a little higher. So if there's someone here at the advisory that would like to make a motion to capture their thinking or this discussion in a motion form, I think that would be helpful.
Can I ask a quick question? When it comes to fires, floods, and natural disasters, I know we had like the rainstorm that happened in April of this year. Does that kind of qualify under natural disasters? Okay.
And also for everyone who lives at Gertie's Run, there are areas of the city that we know historically flood, and there are not solutions in place for those families. So we do know how destabilizing that is, and that there may be folks, again, going back to these time periods who natural disasters may be something they experience more frequently than others. I am not permitted to make a motion. Just as a reminder to the team, if we are uncomfortable at this moment, moving forward with this conversation, Kiana, what would our next steps be? In your opinion?
If we're open to, you know, someone providing a motion that pulls the pieces of the changes out that you would like to see. If we can't get to a conclusion today, then we'll have to keep talking about it until we can, and then we'll take it to the URA board for their approval as well. And the program can't start until we approve the guideline changes, and we can't advance funds to the program. So I think the program's been closed, for how long now?
Since March.
Since last November. So no limited rental assistance being provided to the community right now because, you know, of the dwindling funds and trying to get all of these items kind of secured so that funding can start to flow to Action Housing for this effort. So.
And I see Alan and Tanika have come off mute. I can't see everybody else, so I don't know if anybody was trying to raise a hand. Again, with whatever colors in your background, sometimes I can't see it. Oh, Becky, sorry.
So I was going to ask if we approve it based on the current statistics, and if we find that everything changes and that it's way too low, can we come back in 6 months saying based on current conditions, we think it needs to be upped, but based on the current statistics, this is what it is.
Yes.
Yes.
The short answer is yes.
And I would make a motion to let's stick with what the current situation is, and then we'll address this in 3 months or 6 months, or however, in 2 months, if needed, if we find that there's a lot of cases where it's in excess of the 3,000.
So Becky, to summarize, you are suggesting that we keep all the eligible uses. You are suggesting we keep the maximum assistance amount at 6,000, that we keep 3 years of subsidy, and that we do not add in a special circumstance exemption.
No. I was saying that we reduce it to what the current statistics are. And then further down the road, if it turns out that there's a lot of cases where it's not enough, then we reevaluate. But at this juncture, then we do reduce it.
So you are suggesting we accept the slide as it's written, including the rent in arrears and mortgage in arrears being the priority and removing the other eligible uses?
Yes.
So Becky's motion is to accept the slide as presented. Do we have a second of that motion?
I'll second that. It's Alan.
We have a second from Alan Cisco. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion does not carry.
We need to do.
I think we would, yes, I think we need to move on to roll call. But before that, I would like to ask the question of the advisory. For those who do not want to accept the motion as presented, which piece of that motion for you is problematic? I think that's important to talk about. It may be the rent, maybe the mortgage, maybe keeping it more flexible. So could we have another 5 minutes of dialogue?
Yeah, my only question quickly is that, and so I'm in agreement with Becky is saying, but are we able to come back and change it? Like, because once this goes to the, like, is that something that we're able to do?
Yes.
Because once it goes back, we approve it and then it goes to the URA board. And then, but so how much time does that take for us to make an adjustment if we need to make an adjustment? I'm just trying to understand why we would do that. When we're able to just vote on it now, why not just vote on even what Darius is proposing, the 4,500? So that way it's done now instead of coming back later. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm actually going to go bullet by bullet. I think that might be more helpful. Eligible uses. Would folks like to reduce the eligible uses or keep the current level of flexibility? Do we have a consensus on that piece?
I think for me, the reason I would vote no is because I would want all 4 of those as eligible uses.
Again, so do we want to keep the current eligible uses or do we want to reduce? So I hear Darius saying he'd like to keep the full portfolio of eligible uses. I also heard that from Tanika.
I agree with keeping the full.
I agree as well.
Okay, so it seems like we have some consensus that we'd like to keep the current eligible uses because that was Karen, Ellie, Alan, Tanika, Darius. So I'm going to say that seems like a consensus on keeping the eligible uses.
I just real quick, I know this is painful. The recommendation from Action after looking at the data was to limit this to rent and mortgage. Is that right?
That's not what I heard Natalie say.
Yeah, maybe
No.
that's what I'm saying. I'm missing it. That's
Yeah, I think the highlighted area is causing us some concern.
same.
So sorry for
Or-
the confusion. The collaborative, all of the sources for the county through DHS are reducing to only arrears. And I think they only allowed arrears and right. The URA funds were the only funds that had flexibility to do the move-in assistance, first month's, last month's security deposit, utilities and arrears. So We are the only source that's ever had that flexibility. And so we need to decide, do we want to maintain that flexibility or reduce down to match what our partners are doing? So that's sorry for the confusion with the highlights.
Yeah, so Natalie is sitting here. She did not recommend that. That is just, again, a reflection of alignment with other rental sources. So what I heard Natalie say and others was we would like to keep all the current eligible uses. So there isn't anything that would be eliminated from bullet number 1, eligible uses.
Thank you for the clarifying.
Accurate. Thank you, Adrian.
Absolutely. So I think we're all in agreement on bullet point number 1. I think where we are breaking down, I think that I heard people like limiting that time frame in which you can reapply. I did not
Yes.
hear any concerns about changing 3 years to 2 years. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say bullet 1 and bullet 3, there is no concern or disconnection. It is the subsidy amount that we seem to not necessarily be aligned, which is fine. There are really great reasons for limiting, and there are really great reasons for keeping the maximum more robust. So I think the only place that we need to get to more of a consensus related to a vote is the actual subsidy amount. Minimums, maximums, there really isn't a minimum, is there, Natalie? So folks could get $100 if they needed it. So it's not a minimum that we're concerned about. It's whether or not we feel that a $3,000 cap for the general applicant is robust enough to meet the need.
I shared Tanika's concern, this is Ellie Fisher, about like pending doom and fear for what's going to happen in affordable housing and with our tenants and the people in these situations. But I kind of approach the subsidy amount from a different perspective in that if we do have the doom and gloom scenario, we're gonna want to help as many people as possible. Like, to me, it's a question of, okay, so if this doom and gloom happens, are we trying to help people with as much money as we can sort of reasonably manage, or are we trying to help as many people? And in my mind, changing to the consistent 3,000 helps us help more people. I think it also might be easier for the administrators of the program to just have one. I mean, certainly I'm sure they could manage 2. These administrators are fantastic. But just having a few differences between the different programs that they pull together. So that's my perspective on the 6,000 versus 3,000.
And is that resolved with a cap of 4,500 with special circumstance exceptions going up to 6,000? It seems like
Actually,
maybe
I will go with the team here. I don't feel strongly. I'm just putting in my thoughts on it.
thoughts across the team. I think the range, I suspect that the 3,000 is where folks are becoming nervous that maybe that's not high enough. And maybe a family would not have a special exemption need. So again, we don't have to change the subsidy amount at all, nor do we have to put in a special exemption. So it's basically 0.2 and 0.5, where we could say we would like to just keep the program untouched, except for we would like to reduce the time period between subsidy eligibility and allow action to have the flexibility to determine what's appropriate per household. I think I saw somebody trying to react, but I apologize. You're in that little Brady Bunch stack. I can't see everyone.
I guess I'm curious to hear Natalie's thoughts on, because she has the most experience administering the program, like how that would impact how many people we can serve. Because I hear what Tanika's saying, I hear what Ellie's saying, and I see, how many applications we get and how much funding we have. And I don't myself have a great grasp on how that impacts that. So Natalie, I know I'm asking you to do like a math calculation on the spot, which isn't very nice, but what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not great at math calculations on the spot, but I can say that that is where our thinking came from, was wanting and acknowledging that the amount of rental assistance we have this year in total is less than half of what we spent on rental assistance last year. So we were really trying to thread the needle of being able to serve people with what we think they need and not more than what they need, based on our experiences, and that would allow all of our funding to go further.
That's a drastic cut from last year. I did not realize that.
It is, yes.
So do we need more dialogue? We do have a motion that was on the floor that did not carry. So if there is a strong leaning, inspiration to make a motion, we could take that at this time.
But I mean, I remain comfortable with sort of what is presented, which would be the $3,000 cap with the $4,500 that allows for flexibility, and on the special exemption, taking the time period down to 2. So that remains sort of I'm happy to make that motion again if after this conversation we might be in a different place. If there's something different from that somebody feels strongly about, let's figure out where the difference is.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm back to just making sure that there's no barriers if we have to come back and adjust it. So like we know that it won't be another 2, if that there'll be a 2-month lag if we have to come and adjust it. That's my only thing. Like if we can do it now, then let's do it now. Then we don't have to come back, and fully respect, Becky, what you were saying and how you suggest to lay it out. But like if there's no issue with us having to come back to make an adjustment, I mean, that's fine too. But I'm just like, if that's the case, if we're open to adjusting it later, then why not just do it now and approve it now and make the motion for whatever it is now? Because we'll still be able to, we'll still be, the way Natalie runs the program is how she runs the program. This is just a guide. So even like she can still run the program without having to come back later to make an adjustment for more money if necessary. That's my thing. Because I've administered programs as well before. What's wrong, Ellie? Did I confuse?
Well,
did I just confuse it more?
Okay, I hear Karen trying to jump in. Karen?
yeah, I was wondering if the change I'm sorry, I was wondering, does the change have to do with how we're marketing the program?
No.
So that if it's 6,000 and we're saying it's up to 6,000, or are we changing it to 3,000 and that's what we're saying to folks? So, because I don't understand how that change, I mean, I understand serving more people, but if you have the max, as Tanika had indicated, then you can still work with the 3,000, I guess.
If that's what the data is showing. I'm just saying, like, to not pigeonhole yourself. That's my only thing. Like, I'm literally, and the reason why I brought up, and I'm not calling it doom and gloom, but just what could possibly come. So Natalie, I'm literally like thinking about she's like, no, Ellie's like, no, it's doom and gloom. But so I'm just literally thinking about how this could be more helpful for you in administering the program. To Karen's point, why pull yourself back if we know that we know that there can be some issues coming down the pipe?
Again, I think that we're starting to get just into a little bit of a loop. So again, what was brought forward to us is related to aligning the housing programs across a variety of subsidies. The URA program does not have to align with those subsidies. So if We believe that eligible use number one needs to stay as it is, that we believe that the 2-year time period that gets us into alignment with other programs is positive. We can accept that, and we can make no other change to the program. So all we would really be motioning to do is to change the time period between subsidy eligibility from 3 years to 2 years. And we do have that option. But at this point, we have been about 50 minutes in conversation. So if we're really in alignment on eligible use and we don't want to change that, I think that's important. And I think we can just put a pin in eligible use, as we would like to keep it as it is. I think that we have global agreement related to taking the time period between subsidy eligibility from 2 to 3 years. Sorry, yes, make it shorter, not longer. If what we really are saying is we do not have a vote that will pass where we're going to reduce the maximum amounts, then we're saying that we're keeping the program at its current amounts, giving Action Housing its flexibility, but we would like to reduce the time period between subsidy eligibility by 1 year. And that is okay as a vote.
That's a motion I would make. Yes.
Rob, that is a motion that Rob has made. We're going to call that to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oh,
I second.
Darius seconded it. Nobody heard that, but Darius did second it. Okay, so I'm going to call that for a vote again. We have Rob motioning that we change the time period between subsidy for applicants from 3 to 2 years. That is the vote on the table. Darius has seconded that vote. I'm going to recall that vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those abstaining, please signify now.
I abstain.
Lena Andrews is abstaining because there's a conflict of interest. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion has carried as stated, so we will be changing the program guidelines to allow for folks to apply every 2 years instead of every 3 years. Thank you for the robust discussion. Thanks, Natalie. Sorry if we created confusion. This is all you, Kiana.
We'll ask Brianna Benjamin to come up and Swain Uber to join us as well. We're going to move now into the legal assistance program proposed guideline changes. The existing guidelines have been were circulated to the Hoff Advisory Board members via email. I have them available. You can share with, and I'll give it. So we'll turn it over to Brianna to talk through legal assistance program. We have 2 items. We have proposed guideline changes for the LAP H program, as well as an RFP that we are proposing to release.
And just a reminder, LAP H is homeowner, LAP T is tenant or renter.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brianna Benjamin, Senior Hoff Program Coordinator, and today I'm here to present the proposed LAP H guideline recommendations for changes, as well as the request for proposals release. So regarding the guidelines, we are proposing to add estate planning to the guidelines as an eligible service for homeowners. Estate planning program administrators will be responsible for assisting the applicant in protecting their assets and ensuring that their wishes are honored through the creation of wills, power of attorney, medical power of attorneys, healthcare directives, establishment of trust, and tax planning. And so because our goal as the Housing Opportunity Fund is to support the development and preservation of affordable and accessible housing within the city of Pittsburgh, estate planning will allow families to preserve their wealth and equity and allow for a smoother transfer of ownership, which can ultimately make an impact on their communities. Having this proactive approach will address the economic inequities that low to moderate income households often have. To be consistent with the current guidelines, each client will be eligible to receive a maximum of $5,000 for this legal service.
This is fantastic. I fully support it.
Great idea.
All right, I think we got 2 shout outs for great idea, which is awesome.
Yeah, agreed.
Wayne, anything additional to add?
No, yeah. I think the only thing that I would add is that estate planning obviously is about dealing with a tangled title before it gets tangled. So this is just, trying to catch things further upstream. So yeah, we fully support it as well.
Wayne, could you just speak briefly on the volume of tangled title experience? Because I know it's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, so there's been an analysis. I don't actually recall the specific numbers. There was an analysis semi-recently done of the presumed tangled titles in Allegheny County, and it is in the quadruple digits and potentially higher. So it's quite a need. You don't typically encounter it until a household tries to access some type of program or attempts to sell. And that's when you kind of run into issues related to not having a clean title for either of those sort of programs. But so we know it's a need. It's about working through it. And again, with the estate planning being added, it's about preventing that sort of situation from being a problem in the future by having a will that actually has a clean kind of transfer of that property.
And I think that's one of the things that this group has continued to stress is, like, and we talked about it today, proactivity versus reactivity, being part of what we can do with these funds. So comments, questions, thoughts related to this change, adding in this particular benefit to the Lab H program.
Just a general curiosity, was there any other learnings through implementing this program that you all felt should be added besides the estate planning?
It's actually I would say we're kind of going through that process right now. We're working not just, Community Justice Project, which I'm a part of, or Neighborhood Legal Services, but a lot of other partner organizations who work in the same field, but kind of touch different parts of it, from tangle title to foreclosure prevention to tax sales issues and all sorts of things in between, and including estate planning. We're kind of going through that process right now. So I'm sure we'll be back in the near-ish future to provide updates to the board. Beyond what I just listed there's, some adjacent issues. We know that through the URA's homeowner assistance program, the repair program, that's obviously very much connected to many of the issues that I just mentioned. And we typically find someone has a tangle title when they try to deal with that, or they have tax arrears, and we need to work through that sort of thing to be able to make them eligible for various programs. So it's obviously all connected, and it's all about, preserving not just, the house and the physical structure, but keeping the family house, keeping the community together, and keeping, not having Pittsburgh just suddenly, no longer be like it was.
Yeah. Thank you.
Real quick, I want to add to your question, Darius. The staff spoke to Swain Neighborhood Legal Services about potentially increasing the AMI level up to 115% for this program to match our down payment and closing cost assistance program. So the draft that we sent out to you had 115% in red. However, we spoke to URA Legal, and the legislation does not allow us to do that. We can only go up to 115 on the down payment on the home purchasing program. So we're striking that out of the changes from the guidelines that we circulated to you, and this will be the only change we're recommending today. If we wanted to make that change in the future, we will have to change the HOF legislation.
Which is not off the table, but not on the table. Other thoughts, questions, or comments, or is anyone ready to make a motion?
I would be delighted to make this motion. Estate planning has been a push of mine, as all my friends know. And so I move that we add estate planning as an eligible service to the legal assistance program for homeowners.
I'll second that.
Alan, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those who need to abstain from this vote, please signify at this time.
I don't know if I need to. I would like to vote for it. And I think I might not need to because we
I
don't.
don't think you need to, Lena. I think
Okay.
you go for it.
Okay.
Come on, Lena, get your vote for one. Let's go.
Come on, get it in.
Favor of
One for the
it.
road.
Okay.
We will add Lena's uncertainty about abstention. Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion carries even without Lena, so if a conflict does emerge, we will have it in the notes that Lena did bring up a potential conflict, but is in support of this particular motion. Right, wonderful.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that moves us to now our request for proposals. So the purpose of our legal assistance program for homeowners is to serve clients who are at risk of losing their homes to foreclosure or facing tangled title issues and now estate planning issues. So the homeowners must be an occupant of the home in which they claim legal interest in, and their residence has to be within the city of Pittsburgh, and they have to be at or below 80% area median income. And with this request for proposal, the administrators will be responsible for administering 1, 2, or 3 of the services that will be offered, which are now tangled title, estate planning, and foreclosure prevention. And if the board approves the RFP today, then we do plan on taking it to the URA September board for final approval, and we will disperse that out the following Monday, September 15th, and give the providers or respondents 2 weeks to respond to it. So the deadline is September 26th at 4:00 p.m. And then once we review those RFP proposals, then we'll bring it back to the HOF board in October. And then from those recommendations, propose that to the URA board for final approval.
Have we ever received multiple proposals?
Yes.
What was that, Ellie? I couldn't hear you. Oh, absolutely.
Very cool. All right.
I'm looking at Brianna, but I'm going to add some more context. Just want to make sure the HOF Advisory Board understands there's a LAP T for tenants, which helps with mediation, lawyer of the day, et cetera. There's a LAP H for homeowners. We've consistently brought both of these programs to you jointly for an allocation and for kind of the planning of them. As we are coordinating with DHS, we've found that they do not manage home ownership programs, and we can only support the tenant side. And so LAP T will remain the same for now. We may want to talk in the future about AMI levels. But for now, we're kind of keeping it as is with no changes. But LAP H, we would want to with the changes that we just made, we will want to open up the program to get a slate of providers that could potentially service this opportunity. We also are requesting the LAP allocation for 2025 is $1 million. We will be requesting to use 200,000 of the funding towards this LAP H request for proposal. So that would leave LAP T with $800,000 of HOF funds and LAP H with $200,000 of HOF funds from the 2025 allocation. Since we are moving the programs in this direction right now, when we made that allocation in 2025, the programs weren't kind of merged with DHS like they are now. So I think for the future allocation planning, as we prepare for that next month, we may want to separate out when we're talking about lap T and lap H in our thinking, and you all's thinking about how we want to fund those programs into 2026. So I just want to add that context. So I do think we not only need to move the approval for the RFP, but using $200,000 of the lap allocation for that as well.
Hopefully folks had an opportunity to look at the RFP. Do you have questions, comments, concerns related to the RFP?
Where did $200,000 come from?
I knew someone was going to ask that question. So over the span of the program, that's how much has been allocated thus far, 200.
And again, this is a prior allocation. So by the time we're really in spend mode, we are going to be touching 2026 because we're going to be looking at the end of the year. And I know that can get confusing for the advisory, but these are dollars from the prior allocation that are going to basically be pulling into the end of the year and into 2026. So when we make our allocation plan this fall, we can be informed by this information and this change and adjust accordingly if we feel that that's appropriate. But these are the previously allocated funds. So Brianna, what would you like from us at this point?
I would like a motion to authorize the issuing of the RFP with the proposed guideline change in the amount of 200,000.
Do we have an advisory team member that would be comfortable with making that motion, or do we need more discussion?
I would move for that.
Alan and Ellie?
Right. No,
Oh.
it doesn't have to be me. But if nobody else is going to do it, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Rob has made the motion as was stated by our lovely Brianna, and Ellie has seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any abstentions to report at this time?
I'm just going for it.
All those in opposition, please signify at this time by saying nay. Thank you, motion carries. And we do recognize that folks may apply through this RFP who at this time did not recognize that that might be something that they'd be affiliated with. So we do recognize that folks had their best intentions when they were voting, but conflicts could emerge as we move forward. All right, the state of the HOP.
You'll see on the slide that I still have May expenditures. As unfortunately, I was not able to update this. I'm sorry to the HOF Advisory Board as well as the public. But we're having we've had some reductions in the staff on the HOF side. And so working through all the changes for this month, didn't get to this, but we can see in May 2025, the small landlord fund did have an uptake in the amount of funding that we've spent, as well as legal assistance program and the down payment and closing cost assistance program.
And Tiana, if you have updates available prior to the next meeting, can you send those to the HOP Advisory?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah. And then through the year, as of May 2025, you can see programmatically how the funds have been spent, and what funds, I'm sorry, are available remaining. And this is not just, this is all of the prior year funds, not just last year's allocation. And then lastly, through May 2025, the balance is available in the programs.
And just a note to the advisory, the homeowner assistance program, we have discussed that deficit, so please do not be alarmed. That is related to a variety of factors that are being addressed. So just a reminder that that will continue to be there in red until it's completely resolved. So please do not be overly concerned for that one particular line item.
I will say, as we continue to work through the 2025 allocation and getting the funding out to our providers or opening programs ourselves, the programs that are open right now are the rental gap program, the for sale development program, the down payment and closing cost assistance program, and there's minimal funds left in the legal assistance program, only on the homeowner side. So I think the actions we took today will allow us to get funds out to our partners and let them open programs up so that we can serve the public in the best way possible. So we can have an update on the timing of program openings and at the next meeting, if that's useful to the advisory board.
I would say yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to give us about 1 minute for public comment or questions or concerns from our folks here that are with us in person or online. Hearing none, we are going to take a motion for adjournment. We have a move from Becky, and we actually don't need a second on adjournment. We are going to be meeting again next month. That will be September 2nd. This was amazing having this many people in person. So if you can come in person, we would love to have you. Next time we will have an interpreter. Remember to reach out to your constituents for public comment. We do want to have folks engaged. So if there are things that folks are thinking about, would like us to be thinking about, trends that maybe we have not had presentations on before, please reach out so that we can get those on deck and make sure our voices can be heard. Thank you all for coming and for really hashing out these issues very carefully, not rushing, thinking about all of the angles. That's going to continue to be critical, especially as our world changes around us and our funding changes around us. So thank you for the participation. We look forward to seeing you in September. We are adjourned.
Thanks. Bye.